Hey guys, and welcome to a story so far for the save that I'm currently playing on Football Manager on my Twitch channel. I'll give the link for that in the description so you can follow along and catch me when I do stream. So I did some research into the history of the Serie A and discovered a team who had won 7 league titles between 1908 and 1922. But they've not won any since, and they languish in Serie C, which is the third tier of Italian football. This team is Pro Vercelli, which is located in a small town between Turin and Milan, which houses 3 of the biggest clubs in Italy, Juventus, Inter and AC Milan. Now when the league went professional, the players moved to the largest cities' clubs, which turned Pro Vercelli slowly from one of these top teams into the team they are today, languishing in the lower league. I thought this would be the perfect team to manage a long-term save with, as we can really take them on that road to glory, and hopefully I could give the team the success they haven't enjoyed since 1922. So, with the team being a mid-table Serie C side at the start of the game, when they had very little money to spend, I had to focus on loan signings to make it work. So Joe Ledley was the standout permanent signing, swapping Wales for Northern Italy. And loan signings included Torino's left-back Ivan Michelotti, who went to stay with the club on loan for 4 years before signing permanently. Juventus's Idrissa Touré, who played defensive midfield. Sampdoria's Jamie Yaya Mabi, who played left wing. And most importantly, Inter's hot striker Sebastiano Esposito. The 1920 season started out disappointingly. We crashed out to league rivals Alessandria 1-0 in the Coppa Italia first qualifying round, but the league season was more in tune with the expectations. A mid-season surge ensured that we ended up 3rd place, which was enough for the 3rd round playoff. But despite high starting expectations, we came unstuck at the hands of Piacenza Calcio, who beat us 4-3 on aggregate, and the season abruptly ended there. And it was clear that we needed a little more to compete for next season. So with this disappointment in the playoffs, we brought some improvements in the form of returning loan players with an extra season of experience under their belt, as well as a new loan signing which was tipped with the signing of the season, which was the centre-half Nicolo Armini from Lazio. Another signing was Luan Capani, who was brought in for £215,000 to partner the returning Esposito. And this was the season where we wanted to compete for the title. After falling short the first season, we wanted to avoid that and go straight up as champions. So there was no Coppa Italia this season for some reason. However, there was the Coppa di Serie C to contend with, and we did much better than last year's efforts in the Coppa Italia by getting to the semi-final, where we narrowly bowed out on away goals to Trapani Calcio. Now the league campaign went very well. We only had 2 defeats all season, which ensured that we went up as champions with 94 points. And the real challenge then begun, to survive in Serie B. So as promotion was on the cards for most of the season, early scouting was completed last year to see who we could bring in for the Serie B season. Plans were changed, however, when Simone Orioletto, our centre-half, moved to Parma for £275,000, meaning we had to invest in our defence. Patrick Pader from Calcio Catania was the man brought in, which for $500k was Pro Vercelli's largest transfer at the time. Armini didn't return this season on loan, so this signing was vital to ensure that the defence was well reinforced. And many free transfers occurred over the years so far, but none more important than Hetchem Kalua, who after signing scored 15 goals and recorded 10 assists in the 31 games in Serie B. And there was also Steve Mooney, who scored 14 and assisted 7 over 27 games. So that there is an insane 29 goals and 17 assists over the season just through 2 players. And these 2 signings ensured our first season in Serie B was a shocking success. Fantastic form in the early stages of the season ensured that we were top by the new year. The sale of key right-back Roberto Iesi and the resulting poor form over the rest of the season made the end very tense, but a flurry of results at the tail end of the season ensured Pro Vercelli finished their first season back in Serie B as champions, narrowly beating Juve Stabia and AS Cittadella by a single point in the end. The Coppa Italia was more of a success, but defeat away to Perugia ensured that we missed out on the first round proper by just 1 match. So the Serie B title was a massive shock to the team, and therefore we were very unprepared for the challenge that Serie A provided. We weren't expecting to get here for at least a couple more years, and we had to rely on smart moves for players who would likely push for a move if we did get relegated, in the vague hope that they could keep us up. So the key moves at this stage were the signings of central midfielder Vlad Dragomir, defensive midfielder Madsen, centre-back Axel Desai, and left-back Gabriel Lunetta, as well as Schlotterbeck, the centre-half, on a free transfer. Esposito continued his success with another loan spell with the team, and Daniel Maldini joined from Milan on loan late in the window to complete the side for this Serie A season. The season started off perfectly. We were down to 10 men against Udinese, and the team fought hard for a late winner to get our first game in Serie A started off with a win. This was followed by a penalty defeat to Cosenza in the Coppa Italia and started the downtrend of the team for the season. There's not too much to say about this season. There was a lot of heavy defeats to the top half teams and narrow defeats to the majority of teams around us, ensuring that we ended the season bottom of the table with only 17 points. Relegation was expected, and although this could be considered a wasted season, we took the opportunity to use this season as an income generator on prize money and TV revenue, and focused on rebuilding for next season back in Serie B. So as rebuild was already the focus from early on in that previous season, the signings came in that could hopefully transform the team to a proper challenger in the Serie A once we got back in there. Esposito and Maldini returned on loan, joined by 3 permanent signings who would change the outlook of the team for some years to come. Ivan Michelotti signed permanently from Torino for £925,000 after being at the club for 4 years on loan. Joe Rafferty also signed on a free transfer from Preston. This signing ensured that right back was filled as well as left back, and ensured that Provacelli played with wing backs who pushed forward from this time onwards. Now the marquee signing was one Tichuan Thomas, who signed from Lyon for just £350,000 with his talent already very evident to the side. Now there was also our first regen signing. Fidelma Bay up front also joined for £800,000, rising to £1.1 million in January, thanks to his lethal scoring rate as part of the French youth leagues, and was joined by the loan signing of Samuel Correa, a regen central midfielder from Milan, who ended up becoming something of a fan favourite at the club in the 4 years that he was on loan here. We crashed out of the Coppa Italia on penalties to Cremonese, continuing our dreadful performances in this cup, but the Serie B season went as expected for the most part. However, poor form in December, January and March ensured that it was very tight at the top for promotion. And despite beating Hellas Verona 8-0 and staying undefeated in March, Provacelli slipped into the playoffs by a single point to Brescia, who were promoted automatically. The team was desperate to go up, and having Juve Stabia was a perfect start. A 2-0 win away made some believe that the playoffs would be easier than last time, but a 2-0 defeat at home ensured that the team only went through by way of being the higher seed from finishing higher in the league. Now the final was much easier. Provacelli was drawn against potentially a tough opponent in Sassuolo and drew away 0-0 before winning at home, with Esposito scoring the third and putting himself down in Provacelli folklore for some time. Provacelli were back in Serie A, and this time we were ready. So thanks to the first outing in Serie A, there was some money in the bank for some spending this time around. Samuel Correa and Daniel Maldini returned again on loan, with many small transfers following them. There was Jakob Cecili, a regen right winger who also joined from Juventus on loan, and Riyad Mahrez joined on a free alongside shrewd signings of Vladan Veljovic, a regen left winger for £2 million, Jean-Luc Vignard, a regen centre-back for £975k, and Willy Tabi, a defensive/central midfielder for £750k. The regen Christian Catariano also joined for £550k, but thanks to the signing of young centre-back Luis Vinicius previously, the right-back could not be played until the EU slot was freed up. So an undefeated start to the season in the first 3 games set the tone for an overachieving season, but there was still the issue of top half teams exerting their dominance over this young, inexperienced Provacelli side, who would frequently be beat 3-4, 5-0 by the top teams, and even teams that were languishing in the Europa League spots were able to batter us quite consistently. Now the Coppa Italia progress was yet again stunted in the final qualifying round by a defeat to Bologna. However, the good form in January and February ensured that the overachievement was completed and that Provacelli survived with 46 points in 13th. It was at this point we knew with some investment and for some time for the young players to grow, the team could only get better. So during this previous season, a new stadium was built, the Mario Ardisone Arena, named after one of the legends of Provacelli games in the very, very early years of the club. Now thanks to staying up, there were no sales that the team didn't want to happen, and transfers focused on 2 key areas. So there was getting key positions filled with players who can do it now, and these resulted in the transfers of Correa and Maldini on loan again, but also bringing in Tom Kraus, a central midfielder, on a free transfer from Leipzig, and Dusan Vlahovic, the striker, for £3.7 million. This followed with the signings of Alessandro Confente, a goalkeeper, for £625,000, and Damian Rafael Ramos, who is a regen right-back, for £215,000, who at a young age already showed incredible talent and could fill straight in to the first team. Now, Gael Alonso also signed from Spurs on loan to fill a gap with the centre of defence, and Esposito did not return, deciding instead to go to Fiorentina on loan this season around, hence the signing of Vlahovic. Now, there was also the other side of transfers, which was ensuring youth was invested in for future seasons. So this resulted in two signings. There was Abdoulaye Traore, a regen defensive mid, who was signed for £675,000, and Marinko Dojkanovic, who signed for £875,000 from Bosnia. This season showed how good the Pro Vercelli team was becoming. An early good form in the league ensured that Napoli were held and Atalanta were thoroughly defeated 6-2. Now, poor form in September and defeats to Inter and Juventus showed that there was still some work to do, but all teams outside of the top four were fair game for us, as the team continued good form into November, December and January. And during this time, a historic win was recorded as Pro Vercelli went to the San Siro and won 1-0 thanks to cult hero and Milan loanee Samuel Correa. It was at this point we also moved past our Coppa Italia curse, beating old rivals Juve Stabia and Torino to advance into the quarter-final, where the team finally met their match in extra time as they were defeated by Lazio at the Olimpico. Now, the good form extended into March and April, ensuring that the team qualified for Europe for the first time in their history, attaining 7th and the Europa League 2 spot for the 26-27 season. This meant that the team started to advance in reputation as well as finances and could start to spend proper money in the next transfer window. So all focus was on Pro Vercelli during this transfer window, and early on some sales were made to raise even more money. Willy Tabi left for £2.1 million to Dijon, and in the January window Vlahovic moved on for £4.5 million. Now, Vlahovic's transfer was mostly due to a new striker coming in the summer that would have the instant impact. This guy was Nicolas Torres, who came in for £4.9 million from Argentina. A loan extension for Correa and the free transfer of Maldini after his contract expired ensured that the spine of the team stayed similar and cohesion was restored. And it wasn't until January that real money was spent on the side. There was Maury Bamba, a right winger who joined on loan from Everton, and Nico Serrano, a left winger who was signed for £8 million. Lua Clayton joined for £7 million in a board-sanctioned transfer, and, to be quite honest, has not hit the heights that I first expected when I was starting to scout him. But the season started well. Despite being only predicted mid-table, the club pushed on, winning their best placed playoff in the Europa League 2 and stayed undefeated in the league until the 18th of October. The group stage of the Europa League 2 went well considering the low expectations to remain competitive, and only one loss ensured that the team qualified top and skipped the first knockout round as per the regulations for this new competition. This extra time to prepare for European knockout games ensured that the team was fit and raring to go for the league, with keeping the excellent form going and even getting to the Coppa Italia semi-final, facing and beating Napoli 3-2 on aggregate to go to their first final and face Inter Milan. As the Europa League 2 got back underway, the team's form did start to falter and the Champions League did slip away, but the team remained calm as they dispatched Ghent and Celtic from Europe. And Pro Vercelli took part in their first major competitive final, as they were narrowly defeated 1-0 by Inter at the Olimpico, ensuring this would be a place to forget in the Coppa. Defeat to Bologna and Trapani meant the Champions League was but a distant dream, and in between these defeats was another as Everton beat Vercelli at Goodison Park in the Europa League 2. At home, however, it was a different story. The team won 2-0 with the winning goal from Nicolas Torres, ensuring he would be fondly remembered for some time in just his first season by guiding the team to the Europa League 2 final. This spurred the team on, and after 4 straight wins, Pro Vercelli only just lost out on the Champions League by a single point, finishing 6th, joint on points with 5th place Milan and in a Europa League spot. One more game remained, the Europa League 2 final. Pressure was off after finishing 6th ensured that the team already qualified for the next step in the continental chain, but the team were not able to get over the Coppa Italia final and were defeated 6-2 in an end-to-end thriller with Werder Bremen, most of the goals coming after the young Damian Rafael Ramos was sent off in the 51st minute. This season was an incredible achievement for Pro Vercelli, with 2 finals and a 6th place finish, just 1 point off Champions League qualification. However, nobody could have foretold what happened next season. So Pro Vercelli knew that they were ever so close to Champions League football last season, and the transfer window was all about making that final step. Ivan Aketse, a goalkeeper, signed from Real Madrid for 13.25 million. Lars Schommers joined from PSG for 2.8 million, and the hot prospect Paul Richard at right wing signed from Napoli, whom he struggled to break through for so far. One other player also signed and would be crucial for the upcoming season. Rob Verheyen signed from Feyenoord on a free transfer after the striker's contract expired in the summer. Such a good season ensured no one wanted outgoings, although it took some convincing to ensure Tichu and Thomas stayed for another season. Pro Vercelli were predicted mid-table again, so it was up to us to ensure we could prove we were not just the overachievers from last season. The season started off better than before, going undefeated in the league until October, beating Lazio and Atalanta while drawing with Inter, ensuring we only lost twice in the league in the whole of 2027 for this season. The Europa League group campaign started poorly with a 3-1 defeat to Stade Rennais, but a swift turnaround ensured that all other 5 games were won and we went through top of the group, again avoiding the first knockout round as per the new UEFA regulations. We qualified for the Supercoppa from finishing runner-up in the Cup, ensuring we faced against Inter Milan again, and yet again we found ourselves losing in a final to them. This time it was a 2-0 defeat. The Coppa Italia was underway in January, and again we got to the semi-final to face Napoli in a rematch of last season's semi-final. And this time we went through 5-4 on aggregate in 2 games that went both ways of the extreme. There was a 4-1 loss and a 4-0 win. During this time, the league form kept its excellent showing, and we only lost 1 match between January and March. And suddenly, we ended up as favourites for the league and top of the league as things stand. The Europa League campaign was not as good as last year's adventures in Europa League 2, and despite taking out the enemies of last year's run, Werder Bremen, comprehensively, we lost out in the quarter-final to Lazio in a narrow 2-1 aggregate defeat, going goalless at our own ground, defeating us. The league campaign continued to thrive, with wins seemingly never-ending, but one massive match remained. Second place Milan at the Ardessone. We managed to win 1-0 thanks to a goal from Paul Richard, who would be known forever as the man who took Pro Vercelli into the plucky little challengers into a proper title challenger, and the double was within our reach. Milan had 1 vital game left before a clean run at the title. Inter. The Milan derby would potentially decide where the league title goes, and Inter won thanks to Magomed Shapi Suleimanov scoring the only goal, and Pro Vercelli became champions of Italy. Now the Coppa Italia final was up next and pitched us against Inter Milan yet again, and this was a very tense affair right the way through, with it finishing 1-1 after extra time, and penalties would settle this seemingly never-ending matchup in the finals. But penalties would save the day for Pro Vercelli, and they became Coppa Italia champions and achieved the domestic double. In the end, we beat Milan to the title by 7 points, but Inter will always be fondly remembered that season for ensuring the title went away from their arch-rivals. 91 points, 3 defeats. An incredible season for any team in Italy, but the team predicted mid-table, won it all, and forever cemented themselves in legendary status, just like that famous Leicester team as many years ago in the Premier League. Now, after the insane season which won us the double, we knew that there would be huge changes to the team, whether for better or for worse, with improved investment but also more teams after our better players. A predicted finish of a Europa League spot was finally about our level, but we wanted more. We wanted to be back at the top of the table, or at least qualifying for the Champions League. No major transfers out and multiple high finishes meant we could invest in the team further to ensure that we stayed exactly where we were last season. Riccardo Rovetto was poached from our academy at a young age to go to Roma, and at 18 we bought him back for 20 million, rising to 28. A record transfer, but for a very good reason. The man touted as the new Paolo Rossi would be a mainstay in the team for years to come. Now January saw a big sale. Jean-Luc Vignard left to Saint Etienne for 16 million, rising to 19.5, and we had to sign a replacement fast, as this was agreed at the tail end of the window. Joachim Andersen replaced him on a pre-contract and was signed early for 3.1 million, meaning a profit of up to 13 million at the very least, potentially rising to 16. Now January also saw Nikolai Madsen come in, who had the echoes of a young Duncan Ferguson with his aggression, work rate and stamina, and looked like the perfect technical pressing forward at just 18 years of age. Nicknamed Ian the Argentinian, was a defensive mid who came in from River Plate for 5.25 million to shore up the midfield and ensure the depth was strong. The season started where we left off. undefeated in the league until the 25th of November, where we were narrowly beaten by Sassuolo. Also the only time in the league so far that we conceded more than one goal in a game, so our defence was extremely structured until this point. The Champions League group had us pitted against Manchester City, Shakhtar and Real Sociedad, and was a rollercoaster ride right the way through. We narrowly beat Manchester City at the Etihad in a 2-1 win, with Pavel Palacci signed on the cheap for £68,000 grabbing the winner, and then we beat Shakhtar and looking like we would top the group. Now this was abruptly halted as we were battered by Sociedad 3-0 at their ground, and we were facing second or even third if we couldn't get a result against Manchester City in the reverse fixture. Now the reverse fixture against Sociedad brought a more high-tempo approach to the team, and it led to more goals and the same goals conceded, with 7 goals scored as we won 4-3 in an absolute thriller. Rivetto scored his second goal in the 92nd minute to win the pivotal game, and was one of the first games where we properly saw what this young Paolo Rossi could do. Now City at the Ardasoni was next, and it was a very edgy affair until Tom Krause broke through on goal, and he kept his composure to square the ball to Nicolas Torres, who scored the winner in the 94th minute and sent us through to the knockout stage. This was followed by a 5-0 thrashing of Shakhtar at the Donbass Arena, and thanks to City beating Sociedad, we went through top of the group. The league continued very well until the 30th of December, where Spal shocked us with a 2-1 victory, the second coming from a ricocheted clearance that hit Lars Sommers and bounced him. This was followed by a poor draw at Sampdoria, and soon after a loss against Parma ensured that we dropped down the table into third. Still comfortable, but falling away from league leaders Inter and Milan. Now in the Cups it was all too familiar. The Coppa Italia run was ended at the hands of Inter, who got over their penalty despair last season to beat us on penalties in the quarter-final. With before this, they slid past us 1-0 in the Supercoppa to ensure we are yet to taste victory in the Super Cup. Back in the Champions League, Bundesliga leaders Schalke were dispatched with a 3-1 win at home, ensuring the tie after a 1-1 draw away. But another Bundesliga team avenged the league leaders, and Dortmund defeated us in a very tight tie that ended with them winning on away goals. At this time in the league, we suffered defeat to Atalanta at home and massive underachievers Juventus, who were due to sack Enrique before they'd won that game, as they were languishing in 7th at the time. This ensured that the rampant Inter and AC Milan could not be caught unless a complete meltdown occurred from both teams, and the focus was keeping a hold of third place for Provercelli. This was easily achieved in the end, as the team kept their focus until it was all done, where a disappointing 4-0 defeat to Milan basically handed them the title that they so desperately desired. Provercelli finished third and got to the Coppa Italia and the Champions League quarter-final. A successful season any other year, but after the double last season, this did feel like a small disappointment, if not a bit of an achievement with our Champions League quarter-final. Now away from Provercelli, the fixture changes meant that Inter had played their last game of the season before Milan and won, meaning Milan only had to beat bottom of the table Frosinone to win the league. And in incredible fashion, they faltered to a 0-0 draw, and Inter were handed the title by yet another catastrophic failure from Milan. But surely they would be out for blood next season. Now the 11th season is the current one that I'm playing in, with the transfer window just ending and a massive rebuild finally had to be undertaken. So this was because Rob Verheyen was sold to Wolves for £80 million, and goalkeeper Ivan Aketse was gone as soon as Arsenal paid his release clause of £33.5 million. Now this did leave 2 holes in the squad, but a lot of money to spend. Aketse was replaced by Arsenal's unwanted goalkeeper at the time, Manuel Gasparini, for £15.75 million, which would be considered quite a bargain considering he wasn't far off Aketse's ability in the first place, and it seems strange that Arsenal would sign Aketse when they had Gasparini around. Now with the spare money, another goalkeeper was signed for the future, one I'd had my eye on for quite some time. This was Silvian Dinka from Steaua Bucharest for £5.5 million, and is definitely a one to keep an eye on for the future as a great sweeper keeper. Now as Verheyen has started to play most of his games at left wing, due to Madsen and Rivetto up front, his position was already filled by Daniel Maldini and Nico Serrano. This meant that money could be reinvested wherever it was required in the team. Now this was very useful, as long-standing left-back Ivan Michelotti was the weak link of the team at this point, and Porto's Ariel Elena was brought in on a Bosman to bring a much-needed improvement to that part of the pitch. Christopher Persson-Johnsen was also brought in to future-proof the left-back position and ensure a young attacking wing-back was available to fill in, with lots of potential, and would soon overtake Michelotti as the backup left-back. Some players were signed and loaned out again, with only 2 youngsters completing the transfers for the summer, but these are some very exciting youngsters. So the first was Abdul Tete, who was a central midfielder slash attacking midfielder signed from Stuttgart, after he demanded a transfer surrounding speculation and some high bids of almost £25 million. But he was eventually signed for £5.25 million after he requested the transfer, and this can be considered an absolute bargain. Now, Abdul Tete is naturally an attacking midfielder, which we don't really play with the current tactic. However, I feel like he could fit in very well as a Mezzala, which we do play. Now, the final signing is one for us all to get excited for. I have not seen such a good young player in a long time playing Football Manager, if ever. So, welcome to Pro Vercelli, the at the time 17-year-old Moroccan, Brahim Zemamar. This kid, at just 17, became a star of Lorient, where he came from, for £40 million, rising to £69 million. And he will clearly be a star here, and is a player that definitely could become an absolute generational talent. Now, another player to mention was a previously unmentioned transfer from a couple of years back. So we signed a young player called Maciej Kotowicz, who is a central defender from Poland. And he signed him from Anderlecht for only £1.4 million, but he was only 16 years old. And the kid instantly wowed coaches with his performance in training and for the youth team. And last season he was called up to the senior team as the backup centre-half. Now, after Vignard left, Anderson struggled to hit the ground running, and he became somewhat of a regular and performed better than any other player around him, earning himself a semi-permanent spot on the team sheet at just 18 years old. Him and Zemamar are the two to look out for, and will very soon be considered some of the very best players in the world if they keep developing as they have been. Now, this year we are only predicted 5th and expected a Europa League place, so hopefully some of the youngsters signed can cement a place in the first team for this run-in without the pressure of succeeding. Now, you can join the streams by following me at the link in the description, and I hope I can see you there soon. Thank you, and take care.